Hello, everybody. I'm Hal,
And I'm Melanie.
and we want to welcome you to another episode of Making Biblical Family Life Practical. Well, we just had a high school graduation recently, and
Our seventh child
Yep.
has just graduated. All of our kids homeschooled from the beginning, and she's headed off to college in a few months.
just yesterday we were over there at her college that she is starting this fall, and we were looking at her dorm room and checking things out there, and we're all excited for her. She's excited. And we thought it's, between the normal seasons of school and rest and all that, this is probably a good time to think about preparing your son or daughter for college as you're going into the new school year in a few weeks.
That's a question we get a lot. What can I do to prepare my child to go to college? And I think that typically parents are thinking, what do I need to do academically?
hmm
And honestly, sadly, you don't need to worry about that. Your kids are going to be fine academically. The standard of what college freshman is supposed to be able to do has gone down drastically in recent decades.
Sad truth, yeah.
And trust me, your kids are going to be fine at college.
hmm
If they have a love of learning and good character, they're going to blow it out of the water.
Right.
There's a lot of character things, though, your kids need to know before they go to college. And a lot of relational things that you need to take care of before they go to college, and that's actually much harder than the academics.
Yeah, the academics, I mean, that the academics are a real issue, and they are they're easily measured, and that's why things that you can count are easy to figure out: the money, the grade points, that sort of thing. But
And the academics, though, it isn't that hard. If they can read well, do
right,
basic math well, up through algebra levels,
hmm
algebra 2, if they can write reasonably well, they're
right,
going to blow it out of the water, y'all. I mean,
right,
they really are.
hmm
And so you don't need to spend as much time stewing about that.
hmm
Well, what about transcripts? Everybody freaks out about transcripts. A transcript takes you a couple hours to put together.
Transcripts are not difficult. The one tip that I've seen is really important is you need to make notes during the high school career, not wait until they're 17 and you're going to do it all one Saturday
Because
afternoon.
you may think you will never forget what classes they took in their freshman year, but trust me, you will. And so just
So
every
what have you
year,
done? What have you done on that? I mean, you've got a system.
yes, I do. I keep a document and I just jot notes in it. I write down what they're taking each year, special awards they've gotten, interesting extracurriculars they've done, and I spend maybe 30 minutes per child per year on this, but I mean, really nothing big.
Just to keep track so that you don't
keep
forget
track of what's going on.
because that last year is so busy.
It really is.
And you're so distracted, and you're right. You're not going to think back, 3.5 years ago they did something and they got a ribbon for it. And I can't remember.
What was it? Yeah, you'll never remember. So write it all down.
Just write it down. Just do a little bit at a time when things happen.
When we come back from the state fair, I immediately write down all the awards they got and for what.
And that could be a Word document on your computer. It
an
could
Excel
be
file.
an Excel file. It could be a notebook for each child, or sections in a notebook, or just folders, file folders. So
just keep track of it.
Just keep track of it as it's happening. That makes it a lot easier when the time comes to compile it and make a compressed document out of it.
Now, as far as college entrance exams like the SAT and ACT go, I strongly advise you to have your child take them. They may do a lot better than you think they're going to.
Right.
And when they do, that can open some doors for scholarships.
Well, and the thing about it is that if you're homeschooling, you are the school, and you don't have to release those scores to anybody. If you're not satisfied with them, or when you put the transcript together and one time their math score was better than their verbal and one time it was the other way around, that's fine. You can pick and choose. That's routine procedure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I do recommend you take them no later than June of their junior year, because typically kids will score better on one than the other, and then they can focus on prepping for that one for fall of their senior year, so they can get the best possible score.
An important thing to recognize is that test taking is a skill of its own, and so you can practice test taking and improve your scores. It's not just a reflection of how much do you know, but it's really a matter of, can you process the questions quickly enough and accurately enough to get the score that you want.
That's why doing practice tests and
Mhm.
grading them and reading the answer explanations
Yep.
is so effective in raising their scores.
Mhm.
Now, there are a lot of other things too, though, and things that tend to get missed. For example,
Mhm.
when your kids leave home, the only way you will have to influence them is your relationship. And so your
Mhm.
relationship with your child is really job one during the high school years.
Right.
That is absolutely critical because if you don't have a good relationship, they're not going to listen to your discipleship. If you don't have a good relationship, they're not going to call home. They're not going to come visit. And so working on your relationship, that's absolutely critical.
Well, we were so happy with the outcome of our kids and their relationship that when breaks came during the school year, they naturally wanted to come home and visit with the family. And that's not universal. A lot of their classmates say, "Oh, fall break's coming up. We're going to go skiing here," or "Christmas break, we're going to take a
Yeah.
cruise or something." And they don't that their minds are not naturally drawn toward home, but our kids were because they had a great relationship with us and with all of their siblings, and they wanted to be back in that home circle again.
And so if you have a strained relationship with your child, that's a problem. Let me give you a free download that'll give you some ideas how to improve that. Go to
Hmm.
raisingrealmen.com/not lose teens. And there's no spaces, no
Right.
caps, just
Hmm.
not lose teens. And that's a free download of our How Not to Lose Your Teens talk. And
Hmm.
it'll give you some practical ideas to build a relationship.
Okay.
But, before we talk anymore,
Hmm.
we have a sponsor that we need to tell them about.
Right. So let's take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for a new math curriculum? Well, CTC Math specializes in providing online video tutorials that take a multi-sensory approach to learning. Favorably reviewed in Kathy Duffy's 102 Top Picks and the Old Schoolhouse Crew Review. The lessons are short and concise to help your children break down concepts and appreciate math in a whole new way. The lessons are taught the traditional way, not to the test. Each one of the video tutorials is taught by an internationally acclaimed teacher, Pat Murray, who is renowned for teaching math concepts in a simple, easy-to-understand way and in only a few minutes at a time. Using a multi-sensory approach, having the combination of effective graphics and animation synchronized with the voice of a friendly teacher together with practical assessment, even students who struggled with math are getting fantastic results. And the ones that were doing okay before now are doing brilliantly. Visit CTC Math today and start your free trial. That's ctcmath.com.
Okay, so thank you to our sponsors for that. So we're just talking about preparing your child for eventually for graduating and going on to college. That seems to be the trajectory that you're on. Um, and the academics, it's easy to get wrapped up in the academics. They are important,
But
but that's not the whole story.
and it's not the most important part because, frankly, just because your kids still love to learn because you're
Hmm.
homeschooling
Hmm.
and they have good character, they're going to blow the academics out of the water at school.
Hmm.
Because a lot of the kids these days are coming in very ill prepared. They kind of expect it. There's a lot of remedial classes that they just expect to put kids in.
Sadly, that is very true.
Yeah,
Very.
and extra instruction in the evenings, all kinds of stuff. Your kids are going to be fine.
Hmm.
But there are some critical things they do need to know. They need to
Right.
know what they believe and why.
Hmm.
Apologetics is really important. If you didn't cover that earlier in the preteen or early
Hmm.
teen years, you really got to get to it. They need to know that there are sound reasons for why they believe what they believe.
Right. So when you talk about apologetics, you're talking about a reasonable defense of your Christian beliefs. When Paul says, or things Peter says, to always be ready to give an answer to those
Yeah.
who have a question. And so that's where you talk with your young people, with your young men, your young women. Talk to them about why we believe the Bible is true. What is the history of the Bible translation that we can put faith in the version that we have. What are the basics of the Christian faith, and why do we put our trust into these things? And so we talk about these issues so that when people have questions, when people challenge them, they have something mentally that says, we've talked about that.
Yes.
I remember we talked about that, and there's an answer. And if I can't remember the answer, I know there is an
I
answer.
know how to find it.
Right.
And so, reading books like Lee Strobel's book, The Case for Christ.
Excellent
book for apologetics.
Yeah.
Get them studying some apologetics. But also, they need to know what hill to die on and how to speak diplomatically. Because they're going in, even if they go to a Christian college, they're going to be surrounded by people that don't believe quite like they do. And they need to know when to talk and when not to talk. They need to know how to speak diplomatically.
It's very interesting. Our church is doing a study of the life of Christ, and we're going through the Gospels in chronological order. And it's very interesting to me to see that in the early stages of Jesus' ministry, he really chose his discussions and his controversies carefully, and spoke very, very carefully and graciously. There's the incident where he goes into the temple and he chases out the money changers and the animal vendors and such, chases them out with a whip. But that wasn't what he normally did every single day. That Jesus chose the venue, he chose the situation, he was careful when he had to enter into a controversy, and when that controversy could be deflected by a soft answer that turns away wrath.
Yes.
And so that's an important lesson. We need to say, there's a lot of error in the world. There's a lot of Christians who have mistakes, and there's a lot of non-Christians who have worse mistakes.
And you don't have to fight every single battle.
You don't have to correct everybody on every single occasion. Sometimes we'll choose a better time for that.
Yeah, and they need to understand the idea that having more standing, having more relationship with people, having had pleasant conversations with them many times,
right,
gives you a hearing. It makes them more likely to hear what you have to say when you do have to say, I can't agree with that. And so, they need to learn they don't have to go out looking for offense.
No. And I think it's an important thing to talk with our young people about. And this is something that the culture is very little help on right now, is to say, you do not have to agree with somebody to be polite toward them, or even to be friends with them.
Yes.
You can have a very strong variance in your opinions, but you can still treat them with respect and decency. And there's a whole line of thinking out there that if you don't affirm everything that I claim, then you are my enemy and you hate me and you're trying to destroy it. No, that's not true. But we have to be prepared to say, hey, I'm going to show you that even though what you're proposing goes against everything that I believe, and I know that it's wrong, and I'm worried about how it's going to end up for you, yet I can still like you as a friend.
I can treat you with respect and kindness.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, they need to know, though, that they surround themselves with friends who are behaving in a way that's contrary to the Word of God, and believe things that are contrary to the Word of God, that it will have an effect on them.
Well, the scriptures say that bad company corrupts good morals.
Yeah, and so they need to understand that. They need to know how to find other Christians on campus. They need to know how to find a Bible study on campus, a Christian group on campus. They need to know how to find a church off campus.
That's an important thing. That's almost a whole nother discussion to have on that. But the importance of finding a church to connect up with, a local Bible study on campus or Christian group on campus to connect up with in those earliest weeks. You can change later, but you need to get your foot into the Christian community there and not go drifting.
Well, the scripture tells us that it's easier when two walk together.
Right.
That it's easier when you have companions who believe. And you keep each other from stumbling, you keep each other from making mistakes. And so our kids need to know it's important that they find good teaching, that they get in a good church, and that they find a Christian group on campus right away. Right away.
Yes.
Our kids have seen, like I said, our 7th is about to go to college. All our previous 6 did.
Yeah.
That someone who gets involved with other Christians right away,
Mm-hmm.
they tend to never fall away. And someone who doesn't, they fall away, sometimes for a time, sometimes forever.
It just becomes, they start to feel awkward. Now, they shouldn't, but they
Yeah.
start to feel awkward about walking into a Bible study or a church in the middle of a semester.
And all their friends are doing other things.
And
inviting them to do other things with them.
Formed habits and routines that, are in conflict with some other things they should be doing. So now, all of these things, that's really important when they get on campus. But I'd like to, before we close, to talk a little bit about the step before they go to campus. Because, if those academics are going super well, it's easy sometimes to look at your 15 or 16-year-old and thinking, you know what, I could go ahead and graduate her. She could graduate from high school at 16. She's ready. She's academically, she's done everything.
But she is probably not emotionally, intellectually, spiritually ready.
That is a really, really important thing that we have to assess. To say, wow, my child was able to do calculus at age 15. Wow, that's just wonderful. But you know what?
But can they stand up to other kids mocking them?
Mm-hmm.
Can they choose to get up and go to church when no one else they on their hall is?
Mm-hmm.
Can they do the difficult thing? Can they sit alone at a table when someone got offended at something they said in a class?
Mm-hmm.
It's, in our experience, it's not the professors that are the problem. It's the other students.
It's the other students. Absolutely right.
And unless they can stand up to that very difficult peer pressure, and something I really didn't understand is that the behavior of kids in college now is like middle school was when we were in school.
Mm-hmm.
It's very juvenile,
manipulative,
cliquish.
Yeah.
And our kids struggled with it. It was hard. And in fact, several of our kids, we graduated a year late for various reasons. And so don't be in a rush to send your kids into that, because I know it seems like the easiest thing to do. Let somebody else teach them chemistry. I understand that. But trust me, seeing them struggling and falling, like we've seen a lot of our friends' kids do, is way worse than teaching chemistry.
And and this is something too to recognize that oftentimes the kids who are academically gifted are kind of lag behind in emotional intelligence.
They tend to be emotionally immature.
And social maturity and such like that. So it's okay to say, you know what, you've got a kid who's used up all the high school books, then to get them into some AP classes, do some online programs, expand things out. Let's learn statistics, let's learn accounting, let's do some broadening type things, because those last couple of years in their home, even if they're kind of marking time academically because they got all they checked all the boxes.
It's so valuable.
Last couple of years, the discipleship, those last 2 years,
relationship,
are critical. So,
all right, guys. So those are our thoughts on getting your kids ready to go to college. If you have a struggling learner, we have a book called "Help Is on the Way: A Homeschooler's Guide to Accommodations on the SAT, ACT, and in College." We have lots of other resources at raisingrealmen.com. Be sure to visit our sponsor. We're so grateful for their help in bringing this program to you.
All right. So thank you for joining us. Until next time, I'm Hal.
And I'm Melanie.
We appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
Bye, y'all.
You've been listening to Making Biblical Family Life Practical with Hal and Melanie Young. If you found this program interesting, challenging, and encouraging, why not join us on the web at halandmelanie.com. That's HALANDMELANIE.com. Or follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook at Facebook/Hal and Melanie or Facebook.com/RaisingRealMen. This program is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Join us next week when we'll be back to talk about making biblical family life practical. Until then, thank you and God bless you for listening.